10 times the normal population of autistic spectrum are also admitting as trans, 10 times the number of people with psychosis, with ADHD and these other things.
What do you make of the fact that Tavistock's closed due to lots of criticism about its practices, and now some of the people who've worked there are opening a private clinic? Does that cause concern, do you think?
So long as they all continue to follow professional standards, yes and no. It's not the first either. This is not novel. The very people who actually treated me as transgender 10 years ago at Charing Cross also run a private clinic called Gender Care. And so that's been going since, I don't know, 3 or 4 years as well now. So there's always been people doing additional private paths. And it used to be the case that you just say, hey, use the private path if you want a fast track. And, I think as an adult, maybe that's okay. But as a child, there should be no fast tracking. I don't think they're going to be able to they're not going to be able to do surgeries per se. No one's going to be able to kind of do surgeries under the age of 18. The question is whether, nor particularly offer cross-sex hormones. The question is whether they're going to be able to prescribe puberty blockers, which I would be wary of. Unless there is kind of a long-term watch and wait and persistent gender dysphoria that's been present since literally a child, rather than something that has just come on during, teenage puberty.
And that really is a core question for many people, because one of the concerns about the Tavistock that they were prescribing puberty blockers, and it presumably should be a relatively hard and fast rule, because almost the watch and wait thing that you're talking about should probably take people to and past puberty, shouldn't it? In order for people to really know who they are.
Well, past puberty, yeah, this is the crux of the problem. Past puberty means obviously it's too late to block any puberty. I actually had a puberty disorder that meant I didn't get a puberty until my final year of school. So I actually had the equivalent of puberty blockers naturally, because my body didn't process hormones properly. So I didn't need puberty blocking. But those that do get it are going to feel out of sync with their compatriots. I think as soon as you go down the path of puberty blockers, whilst it is to a degree reversible for some months, it isn't for some years. And it is semi-irreversible in the sense that once you go down that path, if the puberty blockers give you that contentment that you're not transitioning into your actual birth sex, in other words, you're not developing down your birth sex line, then you're going to get some relief from that, and then you're not going to want to go back. So puberty blockers is almost a destination. It's very rarely a pause. But having said that, even the TAVI was, on average, people weren't getting puberty blockers until the age of around 15. And Dr. Aidan Kelly, who set up is part of the setup of Gender Plus, he and I actually delivered a lecture to GPs about 4 years ago. And I remember looking at the data that he showed me from then. I think the earliest was something like age 11, but that was for someone with precocious puberty. In other words, they already had very early puberty, and they don't prescribe puberty blockers until at least Tanner stage 2. In other words, there has to be some development, and very few trans people, if they're given all the information, would want all of the puberty blockers anyway.
Can I ask you a question?
Actually, jump in.
Yeah, I'm really interested. Do you feel, my daughter's 14, she goes to a girls' school. Is it right to say, which I kind of how I approach this, that kids at 14, they don't know an awful lot of who they are, and there's a variety of different fluidities. They want to, one day they have one view that might change after a few weeks. They say that they want to change their name sometimes. And that's all fine, and that's kind of being a teenager. And so that's quite a lot of people. And there's a very, 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 very few people who are actually transgender, are going to live as a transgender person for their whole life. And somehow in this vast culture war, we've got to distinguish between the very few who need help and a bunch of teenagers who just need to be listened to, but ultimately not panicked over.
100%. And what we lack is those services for just listening to those teenagers. We're in a mental health care crisis for adults and child alike. And CAMS and mental health, adult mental health, do not have the support services. There's long a wait almost for getting mental health care as there is for getting transgender care. So, and one of the biggest issues they have is 35% of these teens admitting to these gender clinics, are self-harming. Yeah. So we need to be treating that anyway, besides the point. But I met one person who actually was considering transitioning from female to male, but in the end, at the age of 18, got a breast reduction. That solved her body dysmorphia, her gender dysphoria. And so, transition is, you're right, it should be working out for whom is this the rare answer. And we need to be looking at the fact that something like 10 times the normal population of autistic spectrum
Yeah.
are also admitting as trans, 10 times the number of people with psychosis, with ADHD, and these other things. There are huge comorbidities with a number of other teenage mental health and neurodiversity dilemmas, and there needs to be more money put into kind of mental health support and care support so that the talking therapies are given their time. That isn't conversion therapy. That's exploration, that's
Yeah.
support, that's well-being. Those things need to be up there so that when and if the transgender surgery lines are given as a last resort, they are given after an appropriate length of time of ruling out other possibilities.